Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy comes your way now. And make sure to join me, Larry Elder, tonight at 7, only on AM 560, The Answer.
Dan and Amy, so, of course, the clip of the week is Tom Skilling's meltdown over the Sun.
Aww.
We've been told people start sobbing. For some, it's just a life-changing event. And we may start doing that, too. But I'll get my act together, guys. And I'll be back to you, I promise you. Guys, back to Chicago. Sorry about this.
He sounds a little bit like Harry Carey, doesn't he?
I just wanted to make Kristen McQueary feel comfortable because I think we're going to have that moment with her.
Oh, she's going to break down and cry?
Right now, she's a strong proponent of school choice and of this tax credit scholarship proposal that was included in the school funding deal reached yesterday by the governor and legislative leaders. And she, of course, the Chicago Tribune editorial board member, and the perhaps weeping Kristen McQueary joins us now. Kristen, are you okay?
I'm doing all right this morning. Thank you for asking. But yes, this is a really big deal. It's very exciting. Having watched the school choice movement for about 10 years move backwards, the idea that we might actually introduce some competition and give low and middle income families the same opportunity that the legislators in Springfield have, that the politicians have, that the wealthy have, to me is it's a really big step forward.
So what are the parameters? How much money do you need to make or not make in order to apply for this program?
A lot of the details we will find out later, but I think they settled on about $80,000 for a family of four to qualify for some sort of scholarship tuition at a participating school. It can also be a public school. So there's all this outrage that this is public money going or private. This is private money that can go to private schools or public schools. If you're a family and you live in Rogers Park, and Evanston Township High School decides to participate in this program, that's another aspect of it that the schools get to choose. You might be able to get your student out of a Chicago public school and into one of the highest performing suburban schools in the north suburbs. So a family of four making about $80,000. And the program will be capped at $100 million annually. It will take a few years to even reach that amount because these programs tend to take a few years to get their sea legs, and you will not see a mass exodus from public schools. That is a false claim. In states that have implemented these programs, there are 17 of them. It is like less than 1% of the public school population that ends up accessing this program, but for that 1%, it is life-changing.
Yeah, and the 1%, so 1% of 2 million kids in K through 12 in Illinois is 21,000 kids and families. That they matter. And you've got waiting lists for charter schools in Chicago. You have a lack of school choice options in other parts of the state. That may change now that you've got a new supply, if you will, that will create additional demand. And maybe it'll be more than that because a few school systems around the country are as bad as Chicago's is generally. So just to add to the details there, 80,000, that's 300% of poverty level. After you qualify, it can go up to 400% of poverty level. So it really hits even starting to get to upper middle income families. So this is pretty broad. Up to 100% of private school tuition, which is roughly $12,300. That doubles if you have a child who's an English language learner, gifted, or with special needs. And then you've got the 5-year sunset. As you were mentioning, it takes a couple years to get going. But once it gets going and builds a constituency and you build out that infrastructure, even if you don't have the political power structure change in Illinois during that time, it's unlikely this program will get tubed.
Right. I mean, in other states where they have started it, they actually, we have 75 cents on the dollar is the incentive now to donate to this program. We could see that get back up to 95% or even 100%, which was the original proposal, because in other states there's such high demand that they want to raise more money, so they try to improve those incentives. And I mean, we're talking about this. I'm crossing my fingers that we're not too soon in talking about it, but this still has to go to a legislature that is Democrat controlled, where the teachers unions have a lot of sway. They are on top of this. They are firing off emails. They're calling this a voucher program. You already have the Hispanic caucus and probably the Black caucus going to put out statements against it, which to me is just so wrong-headed, because the kids that would benefit from this are Chicago public school kids. And you have a lot of those legislators who send their own kids to private schools. And I pointed out Senator Kwame Raoul in a tweet. He sends his kids to the lab school at the University of Chicago, paying $33,000 tuition to send your kid there. Well, how nice. Are there other kids in Hyde Park or just a little south of there in Woodlawn who would like a shot at the lab school? And so to have lawmakers like that coming out against this program is just the height of hypocrisy, in my opinion. And those are the legislators that need to be pressed upon to reverse their opposition.
Well, and Chicago City Wire, I'll retweet it, but we did a story a couple weeks ago with a laundry list of all of the Pauls who are beneficiaries of private education, beneficiaries of school choice, really, private or public. They had a choice because they went to private schools, as well as whose kids are going to private schools, as you were mentioning, Kwame Raoul being one example, Tiny Dancer another, many, many others. The legislation, though, so here's the thing. The Senate comes back Sunday to vote it, and the House on Monday, ostensibly. And are you worried at all that if the two prongs of this, the public school funding piece of it and the tax credit piece of this, are separate pieces of legislation, that the rug could get pulled out from underneath on the tax credit while everybody votes for the public school funding piece of this that Chicago Democrats advanced?
I'm very worried about that because initially, I mean, I think a bill like the tax credit scholarship program should be able to stand on its own, but with this legislature, it can't. This is the moment. It has to be tied to school funding. It has to be tied to the overhaul in order to get some of these lawmakers to reluctantly get on board. And so if they try to do it as some sort of a trailer bill by itself, to me, that's tubing the proposal. And I've been told they're not going to do that. They're going to actually just have a new bill that they will have to pass, the Senate will have to pass, and get it back to Ron Arcest. And then he will have to play a little gymnastics because the bill is going to look very much like the original school funding bill with money for Chicago and money for Chicago teachers' pensions. And he was very loudly, as you know, opposed to what he considered to be a bailout. Now he would have to put a signature on that as well.
Yeah, but that should happen. And you're right. I mean, the only way to ensure, trust that this gets done that way is to have the two connected. If they did it separately, you could easily get, baited and switched by Chicago Democrats.
Right. And I mean, I wouldn't put it past them because, like I said, the ramp up and the loudness of the teacher unions already is increasing. And I've just seen proposals, if you wait too long, if the momentum dissipates, that's why I'm glad they're coming back Sunday and Monday instead of maybe mid-next week, because each day that the union groups and the opponents have to try to work lawmakers, the more tricky this becomes.
And just one more on the teachers union, since you brought it up. How shameless is the IEA and CTU when they're talking about this proposal while they're bailing out Chicago? And I think that's a proper description. When they say this is taking money from brown and black children, how shameless are they?
They have no shame. I mean, to me, these are groups that I've watched for 20 years. They really don't care about school funding. They care about teacher pensions. They endorse based on protecting lawmakers who are going to protect their pensions. They fund candidates who say that they're going to protect pensions. They don't fund candidates who support school choice or, for all of these years, have supported overhauling the school funding formula. So they're completely hypocritical when they try to weigh in on opportunity scholarships for low-income kids, because the fact is they're on record over and over and over just supporting anyone who will protect their pensions.
I mean, they said yesterday that this is a reverse Robin Hood scheme that siphons money from poor school districts and lets the wealthy avoid paying their fair share in taxes. Now, why would they even say that? What would give them that impression?
Well, I mean, because they're going to because calling it a reverse Robin Hood is what gets people like Kwame Raoul and other lawmakers to oppose it. It's the opposite. It is a generous tax credit for people and corporations who decide to donate, but it's for scholarships. I mean, it's for a very laudable cause, and you have to have a generous tax credit in order to make this sort of program work and to avoid all of the constitutional arguments that the other side makes about public money. This is private money. The courts have upheld programs like this in every state. I don't think there's a single court case where these have not been upheld. So this is kind of the only way to make this work, and this is the moment for Illinois.
And oh, by the way, by some estimates, upwards of half of CPS teachers send their kids to private school.
Well, exactly.
What do they know?
And some of the leadership, I mean, like Jesse Sharkey, for example, the vice president of CTU, his son goes to one of the selective enrollment schools at CPS. He doesn't go to his neighborhood school. He goes to one of the elite North Side selective enrollment schools. Well, how lucky for him that he had school choice and that his child qualified to go to one of the premier schools. This is about getting kids out of chronically failing public schools, increasing competition. Those schools will have to step up their game. And, I mean, you look at even Catholic schools. There have been dozens of Catholic schools that have closed across the city over the past 5 or 6 years. Also in places like Homewood and Oak Lawn, which are middle-income communities, places like Woodlawn and Englewood, where the outcomes were better, but families could not keep up with the tuition. Leo High School on the south side. This will help give families more choice to get out of their neighborhood schools and be able to attend a school that has a track record of graduating more kids.
And that's why Cardinal Supich's leadership was so important, and he deserves a lot of credit for this as well. She is Kristen McQueary, Chicago Tribune editorial board member. Kristen, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about